Hello everyone. In this lecture we will learn about macros in Excel. But first, what is a macro? Macro is a set of programming instructions stored as a procedure, which means it is a snippet of code which contains sequence of actions. These actions could be keys pressed on keyboard or mouse clicks, and whenever you will run this code, all the actions will be performed in the Excel sheet. So for example, I already have this macro saved which bolds, centrally aligns, changes the format and changes the cell color also of the currently active cell. And to run it, I have created a shortcut Ctrl-Shift-A. So here is some text. If I need to perform these four operations, I will have to individually go to the options in the menu bar and click on those. And for multiple cells, I would have to do it multiple times. But if I execute my saved macro by pressing Ctrl-Shift-A, all four actions will be done at once. So you can see this student cell is now having gray background, it is centrally aligned, it is bold, and the font of this is now Century Gothic, whereas the others have the font Calibri. I can also do this for other cells. I'll select the top row and do this Ctrl-Shift-A. You can see this has made my work very easy, and this has the potential to save a lot of time, basically automate all the repetitive parts of the Excel operations. Now let us learn how to create these macros. First thing we will need is this developer tab on the top. If you can see this, great. If you cannot, right click anywhere on the menu area and click on customize the ribbon. Check this developer box if it is unchecked for you, and then click on OK. Now once you have this developer tab, click on it. Here you can see the options of recording a macro. So let's create a small macro. I moved to my second sheet which is the exercise sheet. It has different tables. I will record a macro for one of the tables when I format this table, and I'll use the macro to format the other tables below. So I go to the first cell in this table, which is the top left cell. I start the macro recording, but before that I'll have to click on the use relative reference button below. What this does is, if I use absolute references, that is, if I do not click this button, always the macro will run from the C6 cell which is currently selected. But if I use relative references, it will not start from C6 cell, it will start from the currently active cell. So I go to the C6 cell, click on use relative references and start recording my macro. I'll give it a name of exercise macro. Shortcut will be Ctrl-Shift-S. Description is formatting the table. Okay. So now the recording has started. You can see that button has changed to stop recording. Now to select the top row of this table, I'll use Ctrl-Shift-Right. I'll add a border to this, then I'll bold this and change the cell color to gray. Similarly, I'll then go to the student 1 cell and I'll select the whole table below, and I'll add borders to this, an outside border, outline, and a dotted inner border. Okay, you can see we have the borders now. Now I will select the student names and I will italicize them. That's it. Now our table is formatted. we can go and stop the recording. Now, if I go to the test table that I have below, you can see that it has one less column and two more rows than the previous table. To accommodate this in our macro, while we were recording this macro, we used Control Shift Right instead of selecting particular number of cells. So what Control Shift Right does is it selects all the cell in the top row. Instead, if I would have selected the first 6 cells, when I run the macro, it will select only the first 6 cells only. So since we used Control Shift arrow key, when I run the macro on this table, which has one less column and two more rows, it will still work. So let's do it. We'll use the shortcut Control Shift S, and you can see that our macro has successfully formatted the table. Now, there is another method to run this macro. If you want to give this sheet to someone else, that someone else will not know the shortcut to run the macro, you can provide that other person with a better way to run this macro, which is to insert a button to run any macro. To insert a button, you go to Developer tab, Insert option, and select a button. You draw the button here, assign the exercise macro to it. Okay. You can rename the button exercise macro. So whenever you want to format a table, go to the top left cell of that table and click on this button. It will format that table for you. Whenever you are saving a file with macros, you have to go to File, select Save As, select a particular folder. But while saving, you have to select the Excel macro enabled workbook. If you have selected a normal workbook and you click on Save, Excel will give you a pop-up that this workbook contains macros. We can try that also. So if I try to save this, you can see that Excel is giving a pop-up that the following features cannot be saved in the macro 𝗙 workbook. So you have to click No here, select a macro enabled workbook and save it. Even this file will have a different extension than normal workbooks. Normally it is .xlsx. For macro enabled workbook, it will be .xlsm. Also, I told you in the beginning that macro is actually code. So where can you see this code? To see the code, you can click on the Visual Basic button in the Developer tab. This is the VBA window, which stands for Visual Basic for Applications. And here in this module, if you expand it using plus sign, click on module 1, you can see that it contains our both macros. The first one is sample. If you scroll down, it will have the exercise macro. If you understand coding, just go through this. It is pretty easy to correlate. The first few lines are the commented lines. These do not run, but these tell you something about the macro. After that, the macro runs, which is selecting the range, then making it bold, giving it borders. You can correlate from whatever is written here. We will not be covering the exact coding in Visual Basic. So instead of remembering the code, whenever you want to perform a particular action using coding, just record a macro, look at its code. You can just copy paste the same code and use it for your own customized Visual Basic application. That's all for this lecture, and that's all for this course. Since you now know the basics of Excel, you can visit our channel and look at some really interesting use cases of Excel. These may be high-level implementation of Excel, but these are really fun and interesting. Please visit our YouTube channel, the StarTech Academy. Thanks.